We're going to kick off the last panel for the social casino track. Hopefully this has been a fun and informative day with Autumn Radke and real money trading in secondary markets and the role they play in the social casino industry.
Thanks, Brock. Can everybody hear me okay? Good? All right, last session. We're going to diverge a little bit from kind of what's been the discussion most of the day, going a little bit broader, not so much focused on casual casino, but focused on virtual currency and the mechanism that makes a lot of your games work. So first, I just want to get a little bit of the pulse of the audience. Who here uses virtual currency in their game or in games that they're working with? Okay, almost everybody. And of you guys, which number of you have a currency that is exchangeable for real money? Okay, a sprinkling of hands. All right, so that's what I want to talk about. My name is Autumn Radke. I'm the CEO of a Singapore-based company called First Meta. And what we do is we are a cross-world exchange for digital currencies, essentially providing a secondary market. So just a little bit about the company before I get started. It was actually kind of pioneering the virtual banking space. The business actually started heavily focused on Second Life and provided the first credit card in a virtual world where people could actually buy digital goods on credit. In 2009, we launched a cross-world exchange, and in 2011, we were doing $1 million+ in volume of virtual currency trading. So that's just a little bit about First Meta. So real money for virtual money. I know that there's a lot of talk about this in the gambling space, but what a lot of people don't realize is people have been trading real money for virtual money for a long time in the secondary market. It's done in auctions, where someone will take digital wealth that they've accumulated in a game and auction it off. We do it in essentially a trading model, like a Forex model. And we also have kind of people speculating on the value of virtual currency. So speculating is not gambling, but I think they're cousins of such. It's a rather large market. It's about $10 billion kind of globally, virtual currency that's conservative. The secondary market is about $4 billion. So already today, you know, I know there's been a lot of attention on Bitcoin as of late, but what people don't realize is there's currencies being traded many times the volume and market cap of Bitcoin for many years. We see this secondary market trading in games growing at about 25% per year. So there's a rather significant growth rate in trading. And what I want to talk about and what I think is consistent with a lot of the discussions that have happened this week around real money gambling is real money is the difference. And I actually stole this slide from Brock. So Brock, thanks, I stole this slide from you. This is a figure some of you guys might know. LTV of somebody in a social casino is roughly about $78. When you add a real money component to that, it shoots up significantly to about $1,800. So in the secondary market and the appeal of real money gambling, for the user, it's very simple. They want an opportunity to monetize their gaming behavior, to monetize the effort, time, and energy they put into their games. So in gambling, while the mechanics might be different, in the secondary market where people are gaming in hardcore MMOs, avatar-based virtual worlds, the purpose is the same. They want to make money. There's significant user demand for trading virtual currencies. You know, we see that about over 60% of people polled here were either interested or very interested in an exchange for virtual currency. What I think is a more significant number of 2/3 of people surveyed said that they would be more likely to play a game if its currency was tradable. So I think that makes a lot of sense. You know, if people are going to invest in your currency, the value of your currency significantly increases if that person can either make money on it or get their liquidity out of it when they want to. Game publishers and the like, while this is being used by people like Blizzard with Diablo 3, there's large item and virtual goods exchanges all over the world. But typically publishers have taken the stance that they don't want to allow their currency to be traded because they really want to have control over their currency. But I'm going to make an assumption that games that you've seen that have had massive impact in the gaming world, hugely popular, and actually have had significant longevity, World of Warcraft might be an example of that. Even Second Life still has a massive annual economy. It's a very old environment. Is these games have huge secondary markets associated with them. People are using the game, they're operating businesses, they're making a living. And so, even when I discuss this with publishers, I'll say, you can think what you want about controlling your economy and having control over your currency, but the fact is that games that have large secondary markets are more popular for longer and more money transfers through them. Virtual currencies, typically how we talk about them is always about gaming, right? But the fact is that today there are a number of digital currencies. Bitcoin and Litecoin and the like are just examples of kind of new type of decentralized currencies. Gaming currencies are centralized. The game producer usually acts as the central bank. But if you look at something like loyalty points, all loyalty points is another type of digital currency. You earn them just like you can earn digital currency from a game, and they have real world value. So if you kind of tie these different types of closed loop systems, consumers have hundreds of billions of dollars stuck in games, stuck in loyalty programs, and also things like gift cards, etc. So what we think is the market would actually massively benefit from a safe exchange where people could trade these currencies, and game publishers and other currency issuers could actually monetize this behavior, because of course we are charging to make the trade, typical in a Forex manner, on the spread of the transaction. It's also just more appealing to users, and I think when you actually go to the core and say, I want to make the best service for my users, and you have 2/3 of gamers and virtual currency buyers saying they'd like to have a convertible currency, I don't think people are actually going to be punished for listening to their customers. So I'm going to go on and kind of make some speculation on where I think the market is going. So even though virtual currency is hugely popular, especially in the gaming world and generally in the online world. Amazon, for instance, just launched their own type of virtual currency point system. They're typically confined to the online world, which makes sense, right? Virtual currency is kind of, inherently online. That's its organic environment. But there's a massive amount of business happening offline. And even today, when people sell virtual currency on the secondary market or with real money gaming, they usually subtract to something like a PayPal or another online wallet, and that money continues to be spent online. What I think we're going to see here in the coming years is kind of a massive convergence of kind of gaming and virtual currency, mobile-based payments, that could be NFC or another protocol, and brick and mortar retail. So, if you have an environment where virtual currency is freely traded in the background, there's no reason why someone shouldn't be able to access those funds when they're buying offline items. So I think this is kind of typical of a macro trend that we see, which is online games and services, linking to the real world, linking to actually kind of the real life purchasing and behavior. So the idea here is really to unleash virtual currencies. If you had a virtual currency that you were using in your game, that someone could actually go to Starbucks, I know that's a cliche example, we'll use something else. Someone could go to Universal Studio and buy tickets with the balance of the currency they have in your game. I think that's going to be really compelling to users. And I actually think that is where it's going. And with the rise of digital wallets and NFC kind of mobile payments, you should be able to just deduct from a virtual currency balance, a loyalty balance, or your real money balance, allowing users to really use virtual currency in a way that has not been done before. So again, I mean, you know, First Meta, other exchanges, payment services, they're kind of merging, and in fact, we've seen other virtual currencies be bought by major credit card, like MasterCard and Visa, both made purchases in the space. And I think that that's going to be more consistent in the future as you'll see payments companies and virtual currency-based businesses end up, you know, merging or creating products in the space. So the general idea here is that you'll be able to use digital currencies, decentralized or centralized, to make offline purchases as liquidity enters the space. So if you have something in the background that's actually calling the market and saying, is there enough liquidity for this currency? And if there is, if there's actually a market order, that liquidity frees up and the person should be able to use those funds to essentially buy whatever they want. So that is a little bit on the secondary market. I know we didn't go really deep into it, but I think it impacts game publishers. I think it's something for game developers to think about is, do we want to have a closed loop system, or do we want our currency to be circulating in a free market? So I'm going to just end it there so we have a time to discuss if anybody has any questions.
Hello, Lior with Product Madness. I want to ask you about specifically for social casino games. There's an aspect of regulation. I think the problem that companies like Zynga had in the past with Zynga Poker is when there's a secondary market, there's a market value for the virtual currency, and then the game itself can be considered real money gambling, and therefore needs to get regulated and be licensed. What are your thoughts around that?
Sorry, what's the question?
Do you see, so obviously you're presenting here the value of having a secondary market, and,
yes,
and we're here talking about social casino games. Do you see a valid model for secondary market for social casino games, or because of regulation, that's something that will not happen?
I mean, I think the value has already been demonstrated, right? I mean, that's why your example, like people like Zynga, they're facing issues because people are trading their currency on the secondary market. So inherently, if users are doing it, there's definitely value. I also see that regulation in terms of the trend we've seen, especially in the last few years, but generally over the past few decades, is the regulation around of gambling loosening up, licensing being more readily available. So I think, yeah, I know what you're saying. You know, you guys have a certain set of regulations between where it becomes real money gambling. But one thing in the secondary market is you have to understand is you are not acting as the house. The liquidity is not being provided by the issuer of the currency. The liquidity is being provided on a peer-to-peer transaction. So it's not really a casino at that point. It's a currency that does have a market value, which is dictated by the market. You're not setting the value once the user has earned or obtained the currency. So yes, there's regulation existing today. If you take a casino-style game and you know, if you as a publisher were to say, okay, we're gonna, you know, create this so there's real money, that's gambling. If there's a secondary market where users are trading, that isn't gambling. And the thing is that globally the regulation really differs from country to country. So it's a difficult question to answer, but I hope I put some light around it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, in Asia, most of the social casino gaming companies have robust secondary markets. Without it, their games tend not to be very popular. Any other questions? I guess in that sense, if we look at what's going on here in Asia, you have a question. I'll get back to my question next.
Yes, my name is Robert from DW. I operate a poker network. So what you are saying is if we have the technology and then using the virtual currency, we might be able to get real money players from other countries, something like that?
I think it's actually been happening. One of the uses of Bitcoin for a long time was that it was being used for gaming type services where users would get paid out in Bitcoin, right? This digital currency. And of course, there's a large secondary market for Bitcoin. So I think what you're talking about is actually already being practiced, and as Brock mentioned, in Asia quite heavily. So, you know, when you have something like poker and other games, and we can talk about this offline as well, you do have to be conscious of, you know, where is your company registered. But I think with a secondary market, we can put rules in about how the currency gets traded, and, you know, which users, limits, et cetera, where we stay on the good side of regulation. But we can have a more in-depth discussion about that. But I think if you add that secondary market, you know, it is my belief that makes games more popular. It makes users more likely to try your game. That's what the data tells us. And also, it increases the longevity or the popularity of a game.
Yeah, speaking of Bitcoin, Satoshi Dice has been a gambling platform, social sort of gambling platform for Bitcoin. They've generated over a million Bitcoin in rake. At today's value, it'd be about $130 million, and I think it was developed by one person. Any other questions? I guess we can wrap this one up. Thank you, Autumn.
Thanks, guys. Have a good afternoon.